Hello guys, welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to explore behind the scenes of form handling in React. We are going to implement complete form handling logic from scratch in React without any kind of libraries like React Hook Form, Formik, etc. So without any delay, let's dive in. Before we jump into any coding, let's talk about something very important. Most of the YouTube videos will explain form handling using famous libraries like React Hook Form. I'm not against libraries like that. Even though I'm using React Hook Form in my own projects, I will recommend you to learn handling forms in React without any third party libraries because it will make you a pro developer. Every normal developer who starts learning React will start handling forms using libraries like React Hook Form. But learning behind the scenes like handling forms on your own will make you stand out as a senior React developer. With that said, let's begin our video. First, let's create a new folder for this project in your computer. I'm gonna name it React Form Handling without any libs and open it in your favorite IDE. I opened it in my favorite IDE, which is Visual Studio Code. Now, we need to create a React project. So head over to Vite's official website. I will link the URL in the description below. If you scroll down, we'll have an npm command to create and start the project. Simply copy it. Now, open the terminal in your IDE and paste the npm command we copied earlier. Npm create Vite at the latest. Now it will ask few details to create a project. So let's provide it those details. Select project name dot, which is the current directory which we created earlier. Provide framework React. Select variant JavaScript. Use roll down Vite. No. Install npm and start now. Yes. Now Vite will install all the dependencies and creates us our new project and starts it in port 5173. Let's open our app in our favorite browser. Now, let's remove the default code from this created project. Open index.css and app.css within our src folder and remove all the default styles. And then open the app.jsx and let's minimize this fragment and remove everything inside it and just render hello world. And remove the count state and all the unnecessary imports as well. Now save the file and reload the browser. As you can see, all the default code was removed. Now, open index.css within source directory and let's write some styles here. Let's use universal selector to reset some styles so that our styles will be consistent across all the browsers. So first let's give it box sizing border box and then margin 0 and padding 0. And let's write some styles for our body tag as well. Let's give font family sans serif and then background color #121212 and then color as white. This gives us some nice color, background color and some font. Now save these files and head over to our browser. As you can see, our CSS resets and body styles are working properly. Now within that source directory, let's create a new folder named components. Within that folder, let's create one more folder named signup. And within that folder, let's create a signup component as signup.jsx. Let's quickly create a React component named signup. Within that component, let's written some text named signup. Now, let's head over to app.jsx. Within that file, let's quickly import signup component. After that, let's remove what we are running right now and return a new div within class name container. Within that div, let's render our signup component. Now let's go to the browser and as you can see, our signup component is getting rendered successfully. Now let's go to app.css file and add some styles there. For container, let's give these styles. Here we are giving it a main height of 100 VH, width of 100% and displaying it as a flex container. By adding justify content center and align item center, we are making the child of the container, which is sign up component, to be aligned at the center in both horizontal and vertical positions. After that, let's head over to sign up component where most of our code lives. Now let's create our CSS file named signup.module.css where we will write all our CSS code. In this video, we are using CSS modules to write our styles. That is the reason I named that CSS file with .module.css appended at the end of the file name. After that, let's import the CSS file within our signup component at the top of our file. Now, let's remove the dummy text within our return statement and render a div. After that, let's give this div a class name card. Within the div, let's create a h1 tag and give it a class name title. In between this h1 tag, let's render our text sign up as our title. After that title, let's create our form. In between our form tags, let's add a form group like this. Within this form group, let's now render our label for email. And below the label, let's render our email input with email as name and ID. And this name property is crucial for our input as we identify our email input using e.target.name later. In the same way, let's create one more form group for password. For that, let's copy our email form group and paste it below. Now, let's update our labels HTML for to password and label content as password. And also, let's change our type ID name to password. Now, below the password form group, let's add our final submit button and give it a class name submit. That's it guys. This is our only markup for this video. Now, now let's quickly style this component. Head over to signup.module.css. Here, let's first add our styles for our card. As you can see, we gave it some background color with some padding vertically and horizontally along with border radius of 0.8 rum and width of 100% or max width of 400 pixels. So here the minimum value of width and max width will be applied as a width to our card. Save that file. As you can see, we got a beautiful card. Now let's write some styles for our title class. Let's align it horizontally center and give it a color and some margin bottom. Save the file and head over to browser. As you can see, our sign up title will look like this. Now let's style our form group. Let's make it a flex container and make its flex direction column and give it some gap and margin bottom. Now save the file and reload the browser. As you can see, our form will look like this now. After that, let's style our labels within our form group. Here we are reducing the font size of label. And also let's style our inputs within our form group. Here we are giving our input some padding and some border radius and removing the border and outline. Now save the file and reload the browser. As you can see, our inputs and labels were awesome now. Finally, let's style our submit button. Let's give it some background color and remove the border and also give it some vertical and horizontal padding and also give it some border radius and make cursor as a pointer. Now save the file and head over to browser. As you can see, our form was looking good now. Finally, we came towards our main goal, form handling in React without any third-party packages and libraries. So let's head over to our signup component. Now first, we have to create our form state. As you can see, a form state has two fields. One is for email and another is for password. And we assign empty string as values for both of them. One important thing is the state values, email and password should exactly match your form field's name property. In our case, they are email and password for our two inputs. This is really important. After that, let's make our email input a controlled component. First, let's assign it a value of form.email. Form is coming from our state. Now we have to create some on-change handler and update our form state accordingly so that it will be a complete controlled component. So for that, let's go up and create our on-change handler. This handle change function will take event as an argument, and here the e.target.name will be name property of our email input, that is email, and e.target.value will be the actual value we type in our email input field, and here we are keeping rest of the state as a previous value and updating only the email property. Now add this handle change as a on change handler to email input. Now let's repeat the same process for password input. Let's give the value and on change props like this. Our handle change function works exactly the same as it worked for email field. There, the e.target.name will be the name property of our password, that is password, and e.target.value will be the actual value we type in our password input fields. And here we are keeping the rest of the state as previous value and updating only the password property. Save the file and reload the browser. As you can see, we are able to update the state and get the state value as well. Now let's implement error handling. To store errors, we need a state to track our errors. So let's create one more state for that, like this. We will store the error message of each form field in the state. It's really important here to create state exactly like our form state, as we are storing the error message of each state value here. Now comes the fun part. We have to validate our form fields so that user gives us the correct information and show an error message if the user enters wrong info. For that, let's create a function named validate form fields above our handle change function. It takes two arguments, name and value of the current form field that we are changing currently. Now let's call this validate function whenever any of our inputs change, that is within our handle change function, like this. Now let's define our first validation rule within our validate form fields function. This rule tests for if the form fields are empty or not. If it's empty string, let's update our state error state with the error message as shown here. Error name was calculated like this. All I was doing is I'm making the first character of name property as a capital letter and leaving the rest of the characters as it is. So I'm using caret to two uppercase slice methods to get our desired result. Now let's use these error messages that we created using our validator function. Now let's use these error messages that we created using our validator function. So within our form group and below the input field of email form group, let's render our email error like this. Here what I'm doing is if the error.email is not empty string, I'm displaying the error message for the email input. Let's do the same for password as well. Now let's style our errors. I used error as class name for our error message, that is p tag. So let's head over to signup module.css and add some styles there. For our error class, let's add these styles. Here all I'm doing is reducing the font size of error message and assigning the color to red. Now save the file and head over to our browser and let's type something and clear it out. As you can see, when there is no value, our validation rule gets checked in onChange handler and our error message was getting displayed appropriately in both email and password. Now let's write our second validation rule. At the top of validate form fields, Let's add one regular expression for email validation. You can always grab this regex from the finished code repository that I linked down below in the description box. Now let's add our new validation rule to validate our email. In this else if block, we are checking for errors in email input. As you can see, if the value of email input is not passing or email regular expression, then we are updating the error message with invalid email address. Else, we are clearing our error message for email input. Now, let's save our file and reload the browser. As you can see, when I type something which is not a valid email address, our error message was getting displayed successfully. Let's do the same thing for the password input as well. First, let's create a password regex at the top of our validate form fields function. You can always grab this regex from the finished code repository that I linked down below in the description box. This regex will check for password. Password should have at least 8 to 24 characters and at least one uppercase letter and at least one lowercase letter and at least one special character and at least one digit. Now let's add our password validation rule. This else if block will check our password input value to pass the password regex, and if it passes, we are updating the state to clear out our error message, else we are giving this error message to the password. Now save the file and reload the browser. As you can see, if I type an invalid password, our error message is getting displayed appropriately. And if I type proper password, capital A, capital B, capital C, small a, small b, small c, at the rate 1, there is no error message for password field. And also if I type proper email, test at the rate test.com, there is no error message is getting displayed for email input as well, which means our form validation is successful. Now let's go deeper. Let me reload the browser so that I'm in a clean slate. Let's start typing our email. As you can see, as I'm typing my email address for the first time, even before me finishing the typing of my complete email address, our app is throwing an error message to me. This is not user friendly. Let's fix that. Let's create one more state known as touched fields like this. Again, we are giving same values as our input names here as well. It will capture boolean values, and by default all of them are false. We will make it true when we touch or use our input value for the first time. Now, how do we know? How do we know that when we used our input fields at least for the first time or once? Well, using onBlur event in JavaScript. Let's say we using or touching our email address. That means we focused our email input. Then if we click outside of that input, that means we unfocused or blurred. So on blur will runs when we unfocuses or blurred the input for the first time. So we can leverage this to update our touched fields. Similarly to handle change function, let's create a handle blur function below the handle change function like this. As you can see, it's updating the current value with boolean true whenever it's touched for the first time. Now let's assign it to our onBlur event in both of our input fields. Now what we have to do is let's check if the input fields has been touched for at least once, and if it's touched, let's show our error messages, else the user is probably typing for the first time and we are not showing our errors. Now to do that, let's update our error message like this. Let's check for email whether it has been touched for the at least once. Do the same thing for password. Now save the files and reload the browser. As you can see, when I'm typing for the first time, we are not showing any errors, and when we are focused out or blurred out of that input, we are showing the error messages. That's it guys, we completely implemented our form validation here. But I want to share one more last thing with you that libraries like React Hook Form does. That is making submit button disabled if there are any errors in our error state. To do that, just before the return statement, let's paste the code. As you can see, isFormValid const is true only when form.email is not empty and form.password is not empty and error state do not have any error messages and touched field state do not have any false values. If all these conditions met, we can say our isFormValid is true. Now disabling the submit button is very simple. Just use this disabled prop. If isFormValid is not true, our disabled will be true, else our disabled will be false. Now add these disabled styles to signup.module.css. Now let's save the files and reload our browsers. As you can see, our submit button is disabled, and let's enter our correct email address, and also let's fill the password input with proper password value. Now as you can see, our submit is not disabled and it is clickable. You can add an on submit handler like this. Let's quickly create our handle submit function like this. Here all I am doing is stopping the default form submit behavior and added an alert. And one more last thing is add the styles to our signup.module.css to make this form looks good in all browser sizes. And that's it guys. We have just built a complete form handling system in React from scratch without using any third party libraries like React Hook Form or Formik. Now you understand what really happens behind the scenes when you use form libraries. These libraries like React Form are great and save a lot of time, but knowing how to implement the core logic yourself gives you a strong foundation and makes you a pro React developer who can debug, customize and optimize any form easily. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more deep dive React tutorials. And also comment your favorite form handling library. In our next video, we are going to implement dynamic forms in React. So stay tuned. And thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.